Well, welcome to the webinar. This is Robin Heppell, and today we're going to be talking about modernizing your cremation services for 2025. I've been looking after funeral home and cremation provider websites for 15 years or so, maybe even a bit more, but really got on into the the cremation provider websites about 11, 12 years ago now, where people are able to make arrangements online and just really notice some of the differences between how, being a traditional funeral director and how that doesn't necessarily transport into operating a online cremation service business. And so we've done a bunch of trial and error, and I'll through today's presentation, I'll just point some of those things out. Obviously, they're yours to apply if you want or test, and how you do things. But this is based on all this experience, and we've really tried to fine-tune things and really identify how an online cremation provider, online cremation customer is different than our traditional funeral home client family member. And then we'll also talk about some AI opportunities as well, and just to kind of let you know what's available now and what's coming in the future as well. So with that, I will I'll get started. So I don't have to tell you, but the cremation consumer has changed throughout North America. We're well above 60% now cremation rate. Where I am in Victoria, British Columbia, it was 60% cremation when I started in the 80s, and now it's one thing that's interesting is that it's leveled off. It has been 92% for over a decade, and we think that there's a few things. One, there's just a certain group of the community that will always choose burial. And also at that same time, 10, 15 years ago, the main cemetery in town started a green burial section. And the people that choose green burial are not your traditional burial people. They're usually cremation people that they just didn't like. They didn't like everything that went along with traditional burial, so they opted for cremation. But now that they've got this other option, they've then chosen green burial. But it's still quite a bit more expensive than cremation. Also, too, as we progress through the the decades, we have we have a new set of consumers, right? So we have Generation X and millennials now, and they're different. They're folks that, especially the millennials, have always had internet access, cell phones, things like that. They're just wired differently. Now we hopefully have all progressed through that and are using those things, but they don't know what it was like before. And so we need to some of those people are going to want to have services that are just easier for them to provide, because it's not that we're doing anything different. It's just everything else that they do is different, whether they're buying things online from Amazon, or making other forms of purchases, or planning online, and they just would expect that planning cremation would be would be similar. So I believe that we should not fight them on that, but actually meet them to where they are. And even though it's different than what we've learned as we've grown up through the industry. And some folks are embracing it, but others aren't. Just don't have the same level of readiness. And so this is going to be actually, for one of the first times, I think ever in our 150 year or so. I know there's some areas in North America that it's actually been a bit longer than that, but where it's not just the who's been in business the longest or who's the longest established. It's going to be who can market the services better and convert those consumers to a paying customer. Now this is just going to get a little heavy here for a sec, but it's going to be, I believe, very beneficial. The Porter's 5 Forces of Competition. Michael Porter is a professor at the Harvard Business School, and he has these 5 forces of competition. And I first looked at this when I went back to university and getting my business degree, and this was one of the matrices that we learned about. And I looked at it then, and we could see how things, apply then. But it was just really, funeral service. And what I'm going to do today is we'll kind of cover over that a little bit, but then we'll get into more of how things are for these cremation customers. So the 5 forces are threats of new entrants, the bargaining power of suppliers, the bargaining power of buyers, threat of substitutes, and competitive rivalry. Now, competitive rivalry, we'll just deal with that first. That's what you normally think your competition is. That's the funeral home or cremation provider down the street, and that's still there. It is a little different with maybe it's especially in this case, it's probably a bit more price focused. But there are these 4 other factors, right? So if we go back up to the top, and in the past, when you look at what's the threat of new entrants coming into my market, and before it was, it could be quite difficult because you have to, for a funeral home, you have to purchase land and and build a building or purchase a building. You have to staff it, and lots of things go into that. So the threat of new entrants was low. Now it's totally opposite. The threat of new entrants is quite high when we look at the cremation market, because you can get a storefront, and you could have one person working the business, and then you can job out removals and transfers and things like that, and you don't have to you don't necessarily have to meet anyone either. Depending on your state or province, you might have to have certain facilities, but in other places you can conduct a lot of this business online. So there are new entry. It's easier for to have new competition in this low-cost cremation market. Now, the power of suppliers, again, in the past, they were quite powerful. So you just, as an example, if we talk about Batesville, Batesville was, they were quite powerful. Them and the other few casket manufacturers, because there wasn't a lot around them. And I don't want to get into the whole the pricing from unit pricing to itemized pricing and things like that. But even that for some period of time really gave them more power. Now I think that's adjusted, and the markup on caskets is quite a bit less. But for suppliers now, there's not as much power in the that those suppliers have like they used to have, which on one hand helps us as the service provider, but it flips, and at some points we are we're the supplier to the consumer, but then also we have our own set of suppliers as well. When so it'll shift depending on how we're looking at it. Then we go to the bargaining power of buyers, and where again before, when there was maybe just one or two or three funeral homes in a market, the buyers, so the consumer, didn't have a lot of they didn't have a lot of choice, so they did not have a lot of power. Now it's a lot easier for them to, especially on the cremation side, to choose, as long as someone's providing the services that they're interested in, they get to make that decision. So we've got to work harder for to win over those buyers, and that's what we're going to be really talking about today. And then the threat of substitutes is a little bit of it's there. So we could actually look at in some areas you just have just cremation providers, or just like transfer services that are allowed to do cremation depending on the area, which is also can also be a threat to an established funeral home that is also offering some low cost cremation. So this is this really, even though this is again a little heavy, this gets you to look at your business from a business consultant's perspective, and you just need to know as these things shift, kind of where you are, and as maybe one thing goes away and is not in your favor, maybe something else is opening up to be in your favor, and that's why I like to show this, is because if we were to run a full analysis for your funeral home, and say who has the power, who doesn't, what are the threats, they would be different. The end result would look totally different depending on the consumers that they're talking about, or that they're serving. So what I want to do now is I just want to go through 6 items that I really hope you're thinking of, and hopefully you've got some of this put into place, and just maybe give you a little bit of foreshadowing of what what's to come, right? So the first, number 1, is the seamless online forms and e-signature. So hopefully you're providing this now, and maybe it's part of your online arrangement process, or maybe it's like a step 2, where maybe they pay online and then you send out, maybe through DocuSign or Sign Now, you're sending forms for them to sign. But the really, like, I think we're past the point of like, are these legitimate or not? So all of these services are legitimate. They're they timestamp. They're all time stamped. When people access it, how many times they access it, and then when they actually make a signature, and it records the IP address and all those things, right? So it's it's pretty verifiable of when these are actually signed and who they're signed by, to a point, right? Where not every funeral home is IDing everyone in person when they're making the arrangements, face to face, right? So I think some of these are actually even better. But where this is going is that you can actually not have a two-step process, and just really have it into the main the main online arrangement process. So what what I've talked about for a long time, and we'll talk about it in a little bit, is I really stress to get, unlike sitting face to face with someone, I'd like to let people select and pay first, and then provide the vital stats information, and then provide the signatures for the documentation. And I like to joke about it, and I've done this for over a decade. I'd much rather chase someone around for their mother's maiden name than for their credit card, right? So if we can, just do that, they're expecting to pay first. So that they don't know that they've got all this other paperwork that they, these 30 questions of who, where the grandmother was born, and other, this other information, right? And then they also, they're not aware of what forms that need to be signed. So I'd much rather get the money first, and then get them to go through the next processes. Now, with this though, you're now able to have it all in one unit. So with what we've done is we actually have folks, and this is just a snapshot of what it looks like inside the website. And so someone's made the order here. You can see that it's $1,719.27, and that there is there's different PDFs that have already been signed. And so these there's a vital stats form, there's the hospital release, there's the disposition order for the cremated remains, and the cremation authorization. So these have all, the person has kind of gone through and then entered the information. So you can see here, this is just a, we just have some basic information, some just filler content. But and they're actually filling it. You can see faintly, like kind of the light blue areas. So they're actually, our process now is that people are actually seeing the actual form that they're filling out, and then at the bottom of the document they can actually sign it. So now your registration of death, or anyway in British Columbia, you don't have to sign it. So there's no signature on this, but they fill out this information. And then like the release form, here's just the very simple signature. So it could be hand drawn with the mouse. It can be typed in, but it's also then tracked, and there's a big long code that's applied to the documents in verifying that the this has been done. And then there is an audit log for every form that's been signed. So if you were ever asked by your state or provincial authorities, that you could show like, hey, well, here's all the information of where these signatures took place. The second one that we're going to talk about today is, and this is, I think, one of the most exciting ones, especially for online cremation businesses, is the AI chatbot and the voice assistant. So the we've had chatbots around for a while now, but the AI chatbots can actually be trained, and instead of for them trying to guess where that so someone types some information into the chatbot, and then it tries to guess what answer they're looking for, and it's got a set amount of answers. What the AI chatbot does is it will actually read and comprehend the question and then provide the answer. So and what we do is we have a set of like FAQs, and we also give those FAQs to the funeral home, and they can provide us with theirs. Plus, they can add any that they want as well. And and I'll also talk about the voice assistant. So the voice assistant's the same, and so it's talking to the person. So it answers the phone and goes through the process of answering the questions. And the neat thing is we can set it up so that it's going to direct people to what your ultimate goal is. So in this case, I would think that you want them to start the online arrangement process. That would be the number one goal. First, you're going to answer their questions, and that, but really the goal is to get people back to the back to the site. And now with how how Google works and Google displays information, is that there might be like the Google business profile, and it has the call button. So they might call, even though they've Googled it, Googled the name. Sorry about that. Maybe they've Googled they've Googled the business, and then they come and then they click the call button, and then they go to the phone. So they actually haven't been to the website. So the goal in this case would be to answer their questions and get them to complete the online arrangements there. Now, we could, depending on your setup, just to show you the flexibility, is you could actually, even though this would be quite laborious, but you could actually take down the vital stats information through the chatbot. It has that capability. I would not. I wouldn't trust it with that. I'd rather get people to actually type that into. It's just a better way for you as the funeral home to receive that information. But it has that ability. It also has the ability to schedule appointments. Now, again, it kind of defeats the purpose for online cremation services, because you're trying to avoid seeing people. So now you could use the same type of thing at the funeral home. I don't think it's ready yet to use at the front desk unless you're a very, very small funeral home. But if you have, if you're a medium or large size funeral home and you wanted to put this in the pre-need department, this would be great, because people, phone in, and the chatbot would go to work, and the whole goal would be to set an appointment, and then and then the pre-need rep could then meet with those folks, and it would, again, it's going to save having to answer the phone, and also too, this whole setup, it only gets things like, if it ever makes a mistake, you can update that mistake, and once it's updated, you then and we add that new information into the library, it won't make that mistake again. So and it can also answer calls quite like multiple calls at a time. So it's really it's really beneficial. It's just a little bit of it's a bit of getting used to, and it's funny. Some people say, "Oh yeah, no, we're not like that," or "We're not going to do that," and then like 6 months later, they're like, "Oh yeah, how does that thing work again?" Right? So anyway, I'm going to we're going to go live here. So let's see. I've got some. Let's see. I'll phone them here. And I'm going to ask these 3 questions. Now, if you can chat, I'm not sure if the chat's turned on or not. If you can chat, you can try it and put a question in. If that's not working, then I'll do this, and at least we can see it work. So.
Please stay on the line. Completed. Long distance charges may apply.
You can also jot this number down if you wish.
Hello, this is Cindy, the AI assistant with Heppell Cremation Service. Who am I speaking with?
Oh, hi, this is Rob. Hello.
I didn't catch that.
Hi, this is Rob. Here, I'm going to phone back again. It could be because I'm on speaker, but let's see here.
Please stay on the line while your call is completed. Long distance charges may apply.
Hello, this is Cindy, the AI assistant with Heppell Cremation Service. Who am I speaking with?
Hi, this is Rob.
Hi, Rob. How can I assist you today?
Yeah, I was wondering, how much is a direct cremation?
Our direct cremation packages start at $999 with no hidden fees. Would you like a detailed quote or more information?
I have a couple more questions. Now, can I view the deceased before the cremation takes place?
Yes. Witnessing the cremation may be available at an additional cost. Would you like more details on this option?
Not at this time. How long does it usually take to get the cremated remains back?
The cremation process typically takes 7 to 10 business days, depending on documentation and regulatory requirements. Is there anything else you'd like to know?
Not at this time. Thank you for your information.
You're welcome, Rob. If you have any more questions in the future, feel free to reach out. Have a great day. Goodbye.
Bye now. Now, I've got the number there, so jot the number down, and after the webinar, you can go on and test it and ask it some more questions. Now, I will warn you, I don't know what it is with some of my friends in funeral service, but some of the questions that they ask are not really appropriate, and I don't know if they don't think that I'm not going to see the transcript of all these questions, but from asking Cindy out on a date or things that I would be not comfortable in sharing. But anyway, if that was to happen even with yourself, what it will do is very just in a very professional manner, just say, oh, that's, not information that we talk about, or, we don't, and we'll actually try to then steer the conversation back to something more on point. So it won't, kind of go down some, some path, and it doesn't get mad. So it's not going to get frustrated, things like that. So it's really amazing. Now, normally, I would have it then try, if it had the opportunity to try to then direct the caller to the website to then start with the arrangement process. And the benefit of our system too is that both the chatbot and the voice agent share the same library. So it's part of the same overall system. So you're going to get similar responses, and you're not having to update it one place and then update it in another place. Next is and I mentioned this earlier, is getting your payments up front. And so there are some benefits to this. First of all, it's going to you'll avoid bad debt if someone and I've seen a lot of cremation websites that they're just mimicking what we've done in the arrangement office for decades. So they talk about the services, then they get the vital stats, they get them to sign the forms, and then they get them to sign the contract. Well, and maybe they don't get payment. So you don't want to have someone who's made the arrangements and you're waiting for a payment, and you're kind of waiting, and it's just taking up time. Maybe you haven't picked up the body yet, but you're thinking about, when are they going to call me back? Do I need to phone them, or that type of thing. So this is you're not notified until that initial payment is made. And then it's I don't know anyone that has cash flow problems, unless your expenses far exceed your revenues. But other than that, you're not having cash flow issues because you start with the money in the bank, and your general consumer doesn't expect anything like any transaction online for you to pay later, unless that's part of the the terms, and you're going to be paying interest on it or something like that. Now, in the rare circumstance, there could be you've entered the information in, and they maybe charge you in 10 days or something like that. But you're going through the whole process before anything happens. The next one is your merchant account, and so it's just good to know. You don't want these to get too high. Now, this is usually a little bit more than it is if someone came into the funeral home, but it by just understanding how this works, you will in the long run you'll save some money, because it's gonna cost you probably on average around 3%. So now the one of the things that they do allow now throughout North America is that you can actually surcharge people credit card fees now, but I only think that's beneficial at the funeral home, and now you're dealing with like $5,000, $8,000, $10,000, $12,000. So, but it's easier to do that. Since you're an online cremation company, they really don't have, you can, like if you're in the US, you can use ACH, and that can be, that can be built into the site. In Canada, you can use like e-transfer, that can be built into the site. So you can do that, but it's going to be, you're trying to make this as convenient as possible. So sure, you might be losing $30 on 1,000, but you're getting that call, because if things don't smell right for the consumer, they're going to just move on, and they'll find someone. So although I would recommend not doing the surcharge for your cremation business, but if you wanted to recoup some of those bank fees, you could apply that to the funeral home, and not just the funeral home website, but just to your overall operations. But that's up to you. And here are some of the main gateways. The number one gateway that we use is Stripe. The nice thing about Stripe is that it's a 2.9% plus 30 cents per transaction, and that's for Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover, and Diners Club, I believe. You can choose to include those or not, but it is the most well-rounded for the same, but it's right there in kind of that middle point, that 2.9 or 3%, 3%. PayPal is the same fee, but they also have a monthly fee that goes along with that, and that's for Visa and MasterCard, and then it's more or different if you use American Express. And then there's other ones like Square or Authorize.net or Bambora used to be Beanstream, and those have varied fees based on the type of card that it is. So if it's just your most basic card, it's probably the cheapest. If it's like a rewards card, it's going to be more expensive. But again, Stripe's our preferred method of payment, and again, it's 2.9% plus 30 cents a transaction. And just if you're ever wondering what that 30 cents per transaction is from Stripe or PayPal, is that back in the day on eBay, when eBay and PayPal were part of the same company, and people were buying like $1 little tchotchke little items and things like that. So they're doing all this work for like 3 cents because they're selling it for $1. So they would, for those super low cost items, they would always have like this flat 30-cent charge. And but even if it's $1,000 or $10,000, they still charge the 30 cents. So just if you're wondering where that ever came from. Okay, the next thing is the online memorial products, your store, your online store. And we've got two things going on here at once. And again, just from our experience of dealing with thousands of interactions now online with all the customers that we've had, the consumer that's going to use your online cremation website and make a purchase online, they also know they're not stupid people, and they know what has to be done now and what could be done later. So and we try to walk them through the process, right? So we walk them through the basic services that they want, any additional services, kind of like pre-cremation. We then walk them through the caskets or cremation containers. Then, for the post-cremation, we walk them through, a small selection of urns and, keepsakes, jewelry, and then some, other like other options like delivery of the urn, or if they want additional death certificates or things like that. So we walk them through this kind of like this 5-step process. But these consumers are quite, they're savvy enough that they know, like, hey, I can deal with the urn later. My aunt died. I need to deal with it. I've got a golf game at 2:00. I need to get out the door. I'll deal with all that other stuff later. What do I just need to deal with right now? So they're gonna, they'll go through and go through and get the basics, enough that they need to, allow for the transfer to take place, and then get the process started for cremation. And what we do is we also, I recommend, 4 to 6 cremation containers. Don't have more than that. Don't make them, because there's this old marketing saying that says a confused mind never buys. So you want to make sure that you're not confusing them, you're not overloading them. 95% of the time, it's going to be the least expensive container. Then when it gets to like urns and keepsakes, 8 to 12 maybe, no more than that. Again, for the same reason, if you overload them, they're, and they know that they don't need that. And you can set it so that they have to select like the mandatory temporary urn or what have you. But from there, they don't need to have a temporary keepsake or that type of thing. So you don't want to also lose them either, right? Like you don't want that cell to be lost. So one thing that we've done, and we don't really see this too much elsewhere, is our step 2 part of the sale. So what this is that we have a follow-up email sequence that, and we can set it up so when they can get like either an email or a text message that says, because you just, in the back end of the website, you just say, now, your loved one is now in our care, and that can send out a little message, and then you switch the status to, the cremation has now taken place, and it sends out, again, a little message. In that message, though, it could say, if you'd like to purchase an urn or keepsake or jewelry, you can go here to the website, and so they can look again. The other thing is that I don't know why others don't do this, but we can also add, if you want to plan a celebration of life or have a memorial reception for your loved one, here's the cost of that for at our facility, and maybe now some of you might have both low-cost cremation and then a full traditional funeral home. The low-cost cremation operation is not going to have, probably not going to have facilities for that online cremation, or sorry, for that celebration of life or for that memorial reception. But the funeral home should have that, and you could say, we have like a partnership in that you could have your celebration of life at this location for this amount, and you're kind of getting this like the second chance to offer services. And the funeral home that that I work closely with here in Victoria, McCall Gardens Funeral and Cremation Service, they have a low-cost cremation provider too, Pacific Coast Cremation, and they they have that more than once a month, where people will choose to have the cremation done by the low-cost provider, Pacific Coast Cremation, and then the celebration life or memorial reception will be held at McCall's at the funeral home. So it's just and if you don't have that, you could just have you could line up that with whether it's a golf course or a hotel, banquet center, just whatever's in your town, and have a bit of a deal and for the use of the room and the and then some in like a varied amount of how much the food might cost or that type of thing. So it depends on your situation, and then we can put little packages together and that people could select online. So because if you don't have this, you'll never get that back. They'll probably just go off and plan that on their own if they're going to do that. And the last thing that I want to just share with you is having your distance-based pricing calculator. So again, this depends on where you live, but it kind of takes the guesswork out of like the actual cost, right? So if you're in an area, let's just say if you're in Phoenix, now Phoenix is like, it's a very large geographical city, and you could be easily driving 30 miles or more. But what this could do then is you could include like, well, the first 25 miles are free, and then after that it's it's $3 a mile, and in our arrangement system, we just put this in that it just automatically calculates it out. They put in where the deceased is, and so they'll put that with the date, and then in now we integrate Google Maps API, and so it's doing two things. One, it's actually going to autocomplete the address, so there's not going to be any mistakes. But then, as it does that, it then behind the scenes, it reads that address and it knows our starting point, and it calculates the distance between the address and the place of the funeral home, and makes a calculation, and then automatically again after like 30 miles, so if it was like 33 miles at $3 a mile, then there'd be an additional $9, right? Because the first 30 are free, and then 3 times 3. And it could be a lot more too. And then it could also be capped. You don't want to be, well, I don't know. It's up to you if you want to do a transfer that's 500 miles away. But that can also be limited as well. So it's just the nice thing too is that it builds trust, because people just know automatically what it's going to be, and there's not. It eliminates back and forth too, like having an asterisk, like we'll get back in touch with you if there's more fees, because if it's outside of our boundaries or something like that. Like, this is just automatic. So that's how that works, and it should be part of everyone's cremation website. So I just wanted to kind of wrapping things up, just to make sure that you're not using kind of a static website. It doesn't have that interaction, right? We need, like, you're going to lose people more and more. They're going to get, I don't know what the numbers are, but I would really like to know how many people have not bought something online now, right? Like, how many people have bought at least one thing from Amazon, and I'm sure we're going to be in the 60 or 70% range, right? Except for the kids. Well, hopefully the kids didn't get a hold of your credit card. But other than that, generally speaking, people are going to be, having purchases online, having subscriptions online. So it's just something that we should be offering as well. And two, like you could get it so that you really don't even, you don't need someone answering the phone. You could have the AI agent, either the chatbot or the answering service, take the call, direct people to the website. They then go through the process, and they've gotten better service than maybe getting a busy signal, or maybe someone not phoning them back right away, or they've got the answering service and just gave them minimal information, where the AI chatbot or voice agent can pretty well answer all the questions and then again direct them to the website. And it's just going to make it easier for them. So if you're interested, please please let me know. We can, some of these items are done within our services, like our website, but others are done like you don't need to use our website to have these, right? So the online forms, upfront payment, those are things that we do for our website clients. And, same with the merchant accounts. But the AI assistants and the chatbot, that those can be done on, they can be added to any website. So, we're here to help. And, I'd like to find out more about how you're doing things, and we're not done. We're just kind of getting started with how AI is going to continually work within this segment of our of the funeral profession, and I'll be pushing it so that it's going to make it easier for you, and which can also be easier for the easier for the client family as well. Our AI agents never have a bad day. They're never late for work. They never ask for time off. Their kids are never sick. So it's it just gives you an opportunity for usually for less money to be able to provide a better level of service, and not a service, it's not the highest service that they could get. Like, you don't have a bank of front desk attendants, but for what you need, it covers those bases for sure. So if you like, feel free to reach out to me. You can book a call with me at FuneralFuturist.com/meet, and we can have a half-hour chat about your services, and if you want to implement them, or even if you just have any questions, please let me know. It's as we're seeing this part of this like kind of this newer age of these cremation arrangement websites. I've seen them now for over a decade, and they've been doing a good job, and they're becoming more and more embraced by the owners. But what we're also seeing is that now we can even outperform our competitors, because you need to stepping back, looking at this from you're almost like a business consultant. We're not a funeral director trying to create online an online cremation business, even though that's probably what's going on. We need to look at it, if we were a business consultant, how would we make this run as efficiently as possible, and also with the least amount of resources needed to complete the task. So, and that's how we can help you. So with that, we've recorded this, so we'll send that out. The phone number again for you to try the AI agent is 702 500 0775. And again, please don't just please be careful of the messages that you share. Let's see here. Oh, I'm sorry. Here's yeah, and there is a Q&A feature here, so you can do that. So let's see here. So you can ask away there. Just one sec here. Okay, well, I appreciate your time today. Thanks for giving me an hour of your time. And as I said, I've recorded this, so I will I'll add the link to a follow-up email that will come out later this afternoon or tomorrow. Okay, thanks again. And we'll talk to you soon. We're going to be, we'll be doing webinars pretty well once a month on various topics. So funeral marketing, online cremation, strategy. So we'll have something come up once a month, and also too, you can always email me at robin@FuneralFuturist.com if you have any questions at all, and I'm more than happy to share what I know, and I'm also eager to learn new things too. There's we're kind of all in this together with this new AI stuff, and I can already see some people. There are some things that like I think ChatGPT is it's a great resource, but it's just it's really just a better version of Google. Right? Before Google, like we used to have to go to the library to get information, and so that was a drastic change if you think back that far. And now, like things like ChatGPT or Claude or that, you can get your more specific answers and more detailed information, but it's still kind of one-off. It still requires you to ask that information. And that, so when I talk about AI and things like that, it's more of how can a tool be created to just take work off your desk, and that you don't even have to deal with it anymore. You're not the one having to try to manage that task. We don't want that. We don't want you to become a manager of all these AI tasks. It's just you're going to just get busy. So anyway, I can help you with that because I'm doing the exact same thing with my business. Okay, everyone. Thanks again, and we'll talk with you soon. Bye now.